Good evening, everyone. I'm meteorologist Tom Atkins, joined by my colleagues, meteorologists Tom DiVecchio and Dan Rupp. Welcome to another Winter Blast Forecast show. We've got great topics to tackle for the upcoming winter season.
Later in the show, Dan Rupp will be talking to us about driver safety tips, and Tom Atkins will have his winter weather forecast.
But first, Tom DiVecchio will tell us about the primary reasons we get lake effect snow.
It's estimated that 70% of our snow comes from lake effect. But what does that really mean? What are the ingredients that go into the making of lake effect snow? The first and most obvious ingredient is water. The longer the air is over the water, the more moisture evaporates into the air. Wind direction is critical here. Now, if the wind is allowed to stay over the lake for a longer period of time, it will allow for more moisture to go over the lake. We call that fetch. And fetch is merely the amount of time that the wind stays over the lake. Now, sometimes that fetch can be a southwesterly wind, and a southwesterly wind like this, you can see the wind goes along the full axis of the lake, so it's got about 250 miles worth of time over the lake, and that allows a lot of water to evaporate in it. Typically, it will affect areas of Buffalo. Sometimes, though, that southwesterly flow may skirt us here along the lake shore. Now, a more common wind to give us some good lake effect bands here along the lake shores when the fetch is more west to west-southwest. Not quite as much fetch, probably about 150 miles worth, but still enough where it will give us some pretty good amounts of moisture and hit us in the lake shore with that good lake effect snow. The shortest fetch certainly would be that northwest flow, anywhere from 40 to 50 miles of fetch. So usually that is a shorter fetch, and you would expect that the snow amounts would be lighter. But many of you who live in the inland snow belts here may say, well, we still get a lot of snow even on that northwest flow. Well, keep in mind, Lake Erie isn't the only lake that has a fetch. Notice if you have a northwest wind, you can pick up moisture off of Lake Superior, Lake Huron, and Lake Erie. Now, unlike Erie, where we have some pretty good hills, it's relatively flat in Canada and relatively flat here in the northern parts of Michigan and the upper peninsula of Michigan to some extent. So that moisture basically stays put. We do get some bands off of those areas, but a lot of that moisture stays put until it reaches our neck of the woods, and that's where we can get some pretty good lake effect snows. Another thing to consider is the temperature of the water, or more specifically, the differences between the water temperature and the air temperature. The greater the difference between the warmer water and the colder air, the more water evaporates into the air. These differences are normally more pronounced in early winter, which is why we tend to get higher lake effect snow amounts early in the winter season. Now, later in the season, the lake gets colder and even possibly becomes ice covered, limiting the amount of moisture that can evaporate into the air. Sure is a nice view, and it's also another reason that we receive lake effect snow in our region. Here's a look at the snowfall map and a topography map. Now, do you notice any similarities here? Well, you may notice that we have high snow amounts here in interior Erie County and right along the Erie-Crawford County line. That corresponds nicely to the higher elevations. So in order to get any precipitation, including lake effect snow, to develop, you have to get the air to rise. Now, there are several ways to do that. And one way we kind of talked about earlier is adding heat and humidity to the air. When you add warmth, which the lake does in lake effect, and when you add humidity, which of course the lake does when it evaporates that moisture into the air, you not only add more water vapor to allow for clouds and snow to form, you lower the density of that air. When you add heat and humidity, you lower the density. That makes it easier for the air to rise, and that's what you need to get lake effect snow. But one of the best ways here to get that lake effect snow to go is to actually allow for the topography, have the hills provide a natural way for the air to rise. And that's what happens when you go away from the lake shore. You hit these higher elevations, the air goes up, and that allows for more lake effect snow to form. So it would make sense that the higher up you go, the more snow you would get. But we have a bit of a problem with that though, because here's Erie County and its lake effect snow amounts. Notice in Crawford County, where the elevations are generally a little higher than Erie County, you would expect higher snow amounts, correct? Based on the topography theory. But in this case, well, they have less snow. Here's the Meadville area, and the orange there has less snow than the higher amounts that we get here in Erie County. Well, what's going on here? Well, if you notice, we have no real good water sources from Erie toward Meadville. So while we have Big Lake Erie to allow for the initial water source, once it hits land, there's no new water sources to add moisture. So essentially, by the time that air gets into Crawford County, a lot of it has snowed out here in those higher elevations. Now there's still a good amount of moisture, and obviously Crawford County gets its share of snow, but since there's no new moisture sources to allow for increased snow amounts, the amount of lake effect snow in Crawford County tends to be less than Erie County.
The lowest elevations are along the lake shore, and that's why Erie, the city itself, doesn't receive as much snow. But don't think for a moment, though, that the lake shore is flat. Add a west-southwest flow, and the lakeshore will get its share of heavier lake effect snow. December 2017 was expected to be a snowy one, but nobody expected this.
So after looking at this segment, hopefully you get a better appreciation of the challenges that we face when we forecast lake effect snow. But don't worry, your weather authority is here to meet that challenge each and every winter season. Enjoy the weather.
Thank you, Tom D. Now, after the break, Dan Rupp will be here with more information about how to drive safely this upcoming winter season. Welcome back. You know, driving can be tricky at best during the winter, so Dan Rupp talked to some experts about driving safely this winter season.
Thank you, Tom. Maybe some of you are in the market for a new vehicle that's really good in the winter. We are here at New Motors Subaru, where Alan Yingling, the general manager, is going to show us the latest for vehicles that are great for the upcoming season.
Hey,
Alan.
Dan.
Hey.
Welcome to New Motors.
Thanks for letting us come out here. And we just kind of want to talk about the all-wheel drive that you guys have here in your vehicles and some of the new stuff that's up for sale for everybody.
Yeah, great. Well, actually, what we're standing in front of right now is the all-new redesigned 2020 Subaru Outback. The one thing that's great with the Subaru product is every one of our SUVs and sedans come standard with all-wheel drive.
Yeah, I see the ground clearance on this vehicle is pretty high, which is good for some heavy snowfall that's on maybe the roadways.
Yeah, all of our Subaru SUVs come with 8.7 inches of ground clearance, which pair really well with Erie snow. Subaru has a symmetrical all-wheel drive, which is unique to them. Most of the all-wheel drives in the market today are front-wheel drive, and when they sense something is wrong, they kick power to the back wheels to give them power. But with the Subaru, it's four-wheel drive all the time. You never know when the roads are going to become unfavorable, and that's what makes the Subaru so unique, is you always have power. You don't have to worry.
Alan, tell us about one of the new features on this Subaru Outback we have.
Yeah, on the brand new Subaru Outback, it's a feature that's been out for a few years with Subaru, but it's the EyeSight technology. It has two HD cameras that work like a second set of eyes for the driver. It gives you a safety feature called pre-collision braking, where up to 25 miles per hour, this vehicle will come to a complete stop before a rear-end collision. If a car in front of you stops, if something comes out into the middle of the road that the camera can pick up, it'll come to a complete stop up to 25 miles per hour.
Great safety features to have on a great winter driving vehicle, and you have some other ones that you want to show us as well.
Yeah, I want to show you the other all-wheel drive models that Subaru offers. And not only do all of our SUVs come with all-wheel drive, but all of our sedans come standard with all-wheel drive as well.
Okay.
And when you live in PA and we get the snow that we get, you need to have all-wheel drive. In the brand new 2020 Subaru Outback and Legacy, there's an all-new 11.6-inch touchscreen in all of our models.
Alan, there's one more vehicle you want to show us here?
Yeah, Dan, I want to show you the 2020 Subaru Ascent. So this model is a full-size SUV. Comes standard in a 7-passenger model, and you can actually go up to an 8-passenger model. It keeps Subaru's symmetrical all-wheel drive.
The all-wheel drive is very important, I think, for vehicles in the winter, but also the tires. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, all of our models come standard with an all-season tire, with which an all-wheel drive vehicle, that's going to get you around perfect in our Erie weather. But if you had a front-wheel drive vehicle, I'd probably recommend an aggressive snow tire to get you around.
The all-wheel drive, does the driver have to do anything to activate that?
No, that's what's great about a Subaru. If you look inside, there's actually no buttons needed to activate the all-wheel drive system. So there's no user input. Right when you start up your Subaru, you have all-wheel drive all time with no user input needed.
It's ready for the winter. When you turn it on, that's one less thing to worry about.
One less thing to worry about.
So the all-wheel drive, the tires, two very important things when it comes to winter weather driving, and some great options. Alan Yingling showed us here, the general manager of New Motors Subaru. We want to thank you for letting us come down and seeing the latest and greatest in technology for new vehicles. So we're going to head to our next stop. Thank you.
My pleasure, Dan.
Yep, we're going to give you some driving tips next up here. Hi, Brenda.
Hi, Dan.
Hey, thanks for letting us come down here to Transportation Solutions. And I think it's good to have a refresher on winter weather driving tips and maybe some tips people don't know about. So I was hoping you can give us some of that information.
Thanks for the opportunity. So we do a lot about dropping gears. I'm all about teaching people how to drop gears because people know the gears are there, but they don't get it.
Yeah.
So everyone is like, all right, do you have an all-wheel drive? Do you have a four-wheel drive? What do you recommend? All of that is great to help you start and make your way through bad weather, but as far as stopping, ice is ice. It does not matter what you have. However, you can drop gears. What that does is it takes your vehicle from drive, which makes it happy. That's what I call it, a happy peppy mode.
Yeah.
When you drop it once, it pulls it back, makes it the engine not so happy, and you drop it again and it'll grab you so you don't have to pounce on the brake. Braking and ice don't go together.
Is that something that would be bad for your vehicle? Maybe some people are wondering.
You know, that's a really good question. We hear that all the time. It's not. Now, it sounds funky, okay? So like if you drop gears and you leave it in drop gear, right? All it's doing is taking your engine from revving so high down to a slower revolution, so it's not being so happy and it'll be heavier. Doesn't hurt it at all, as long as you stay under 25 miles an hour.
What are some things that people need to do before the winter season?
Okay, so
preparation.
We're all starting to get our boots out, right? But now you also have to think about your car, okay? So if you have winter tires, now's the time to start thinking about what date you're going to get them on. But secondly is the weight. We like to add weight to our vehicles. So one, we always make sure none of our cars are less than a half a tank because that extra weight of your gas will help your back end not take off and do that fishtailing. And number two is cat litter. So you can't have anything solid. The state does not allow like bricks to weigh the back down, but you certainly can have cat litter. And cat litter is a great prevention. Then if you do slide and get in a ditch, you can put it around your tires and it'll give you that traction to get out.
When it comes to ABS brakes, do you need to pump the brakes when you're trying to slow down, or do you just sit on the brake?
You just stay on the brakes, okay? It's stomp and stay is the statement that ABS industry makes. If you have ABS, it says it on your dash, you go to hit the brakes, you stay on it, and then that makes a bad noise, but it's okay again. What's happening is your foot's on the brake, yet your wheels are still turning from ABS is taking charge of your vehicle, okay? If you don't have ABS and you think you do, right, you go to the brake, your back end's just gonna start doing this. So it's really, really important that you understand whether or not you have ABS.
Thank you very much, Brenda. Really appreciate it. We have a little bit more advice for you from Dave's Auto in Waterford, so let's head on over there.
Biggest thing is there's a move over law a lot of people aren't aware of. When you see a tow truck, you're supposed to slow down and move over, especially on the thruway, to get in the other lane if at all possible. Because when we're out there, you got to be careful about getting run over every other time you're doing something. Always the first snowstorm's the worst, where people forget to slow down.
Thank you, Dan. Hopefully the drivers will stay safe this winter season. Stay tuned. After the break, Tom Atkins will have his winter weather forecast.
I'm sure many of you are wondering what we can expect for this upcoming winter season. Here's Tom Atkins with your winter blast forecast.
Well, it's that time in the show where I take a shot at your winter forecast, and as it says here, forecasting winter weather can be brutal. I have enough trouble getting the next 7 days right, let alone the next 3 to 5 months. But here's a blast from the past. This is the winters of the late 70s. Some of you remember those brutal winters in our area. But there are several methods we can use to make a long-term forecast. One is sunspot activity, and the other two underneath there are what we call oscillations, the North American oscillation and the Arctic. And those are movements of the jet stream that allow colder air to sink down in our area. The early indications is that from these three, we may get a milder start in December and then a colder finish. But let me talk a little bit about sunspots. Low sunspot activity, which is the cycle that we're in right now, usually causes colder winters in the Northeast. But those oscillations are less clear. When they're dropping, that allows that cold air to come across the northern tier of states like it did in 93, 94. But right now, the long-range forecasting is very nebulous here. So we're going to kind of push those to the side. Here's some other methods, and you've heard of these. La Nina, El Nino, okay? How about woolly worms? That's a favorite one locally. Weather Service puts out a winter outlook, and of course, we use the analog method a lot of times here at WJET. This is your El Nino, La Nina. On the top side is the El Nino, and you get strong ones like in the 80s and late 90s, you get very warm winters. La Nina is the other side of the weather coin, but even that can cause some flowers to bloom during the winter. But we have neither this year. Speaking of La Nina, that's when the ocean temperatures are cooler in the Pacific. El Nino is when they're warmer. And as we look at the United States as a whole, as I said, they can lead to some warmer and wetter winters, but neither are in effect this year. So we go on to the woolly worms. And here's a couple different woolly worms. Saw one that was all black. That would mean a very harsh winter, but we've also seen them black with brown in the middle. Harsh in the beginning, mild middle, and a cold end. Well, you take your shot there. National Weather Service, here's their outlook. They've got the coldest air in the northern plains, a lot of warm air in the south, so again, kind of nebulous. We're about average as far as temperatures are concerned. Now, as far as precipitation is concerned, they're saying that's kind of snaking towards us, the above normal precipitation pattern. So the National Weather Service saying, you know, typical winter temperatures, maybe a little bit above normal precipitation. But we use the analog method a lot of times here in the JET studios, and that's taking weather patterns in the past that were similar to what's going on so far and looking at the winters that followed, seeing if there's kind of a pattern there. So the analog years that we're using, 2013 and 14 is one of them. That was a very cold and snowy winter a few years ago with 139.4 inches of snow in Erie. The kids in the igloo in that winter. The following winter was not as snowy, but still above average at 110.8 inches in Erie, but it featured the coldest February. So the analog years, as we show you here, with an outdoor convenience store storing their ice cream outside because it was 26 below. That's the 14-15 winter. So the top two are very cold and kind of snowy. The other analog years that we're using, 93, 94, 131 inches of snow in the Erie area. 2004, 2005, very cold and snowy too, 143 inches. And last year, a below normal snowfall total. So we've got kind of a mix there, but it's weighted more towards the cold side. So as far as this winter is concerned, a little bit of a cold shot already happening in November, and as far as temperatures are concerned, we think maybe a little bit above average, a little milder as we go into December. And then it turns, kind of like the woolly worm. January, February, and March, we think it's going to get colder to start the year. What about snowfall? Average to above normal in the month of November, what we're in right now, and then maybe a little bit below normal next month. And then back to the above normal snowfall pattern for January and February and near normal for March. Well, what does that mean? Here are the normals or averages as we look around the tri-state area. Erie usually gets about 101 inches, Ashtabula 105, Meadville 99, Warren 69, and Jamestown, New York 84. In the middle is the snow belt that can go anywhere on average from 135 to 250 inches of snow. Well, if we apply those analogs for this year, this is what I think is going to happen. 118 inches for Erie, 120 Ashtabula, 115 for Meadville, 85 for Warren, and 100 inches up in Jamestown, New York, with a heavier snowbelt season from 155 to 285. So again, that's our guess from your Jet Pinpoint team of meteorologists. Of course, anything can happen, and we'll just have to wait and see as we go through the winter of 2019-2020. Well, that's a wrap of another winter weather show. And before we go, we want to point out all of us go out into the community and speak to different groups and organizations, especially schools. But Tom DiVecchio and I had the unique opportunity for both of us to go to James W. Parker Middle School, Laurie Santos' classroom. They put on a great show. When we visited them, they even made videos for us as we talked weather to fifth graders.
That's right, and a lot of our talk did emphasize wintertime weather. They wanted to know about wind chill. They talked about snow amounts. We talked about lake effect snow, many of the topics that we cover here on our winter weather show. It was a fun time. Always look forward to doing that each year.
Great because it's snowing so hard. Radars are great, computer models are great, satellite pictures are great. There's nothing better than having eyes and ears on the ground. So we have a network of weather watchers, and Mrs. Santos is one of them, that report us weather every day. And that is a huge help to our forecast. Well, it's that time again to say goodbye and head you on out into the winter. Of course, we'll be here giving our forecasts on TV, Facebook, Twitter, and YourErie.com. I'd like to thank my colleagues, Tom DiVecchio, Dan Rupp, and the production staff at Jet TV. Make it a good and safe winter. We'll see you down the road.